the U.S. Embassy in Qatar has put in place a shelter-in-place order for Americans in Qatar. And
a lot of.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of business interest there. There is one of the largest air bases of the U.S. military in the Middle East is in Qatar. Another one is in Bahrain. But in Qatar, they have said shelter in place Americans. The Qatari government has put in a ban on their airspace, shut down the airspace for the time being. So you're seeing flights that were supposed to be landing in Doha that are being diverted to other places. So it seems like that could be a potential target of an Iranian retaliation shortly. We pray for Americans and the troops that are there, if that is the case, and that the defenses that the U.S. has will be able to ward off any such attack. But I think to Robert's point, that's the short term right now is securing our military personnel and our bases in the region from an Iranian retaliation and hoping that it doesn't harm or kill U.S. assets. Now, this would not be the first time that the Iranians have killed American service members. If you speak with any veteran that served in the global war on terror, they know that Iranian militias, Iranian IRGC themselves, were fighting them. They were fighting U.S. in these theaters and killing many thousands of Americans. So this is not something that, although we weren't at war with Iran, Iran was at war with the United States and has been for decades and have a lot of American blood on their hands. So I think how this develops in the short term is the first thing. But I also think it is important that President Trump has continued to talk about peace and negotiation. This wasn't a shock and awe Baghdad bombing like we saw with the war in Iraq. This was precision strikes on targets, not in major city centers or anything like that. And then what did the bombers do? They turned around and went home. No infantry invading, no other airstrikes. This was very targeted at the nuclear program.
I was actually glad that people hopefully tuned in and saw President Trump's statement. I think we have some of those sound from that as well, because I actually had my kids watch it because they were all hearing about the news started to rumble around. And I go, hey, this could be very much a historical moment. You probably need to be in the room. You probably need to hear what's going on. I'll explain to you the situation. And then I think President Trump came in definitively, strongly made the statement, and it actually brought a little bit more comfort to my family to hear what he was saying. Again, not saying we're going into war, saying we were going in to stop war, essentially. Let's hear from President Trump, Bite 16.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
A spectacular military success. Now, we are still awaiting sort of the full damage. We've seen some of the overhead images. You can definitely see that tunnels were taken out. A lot of things were taken out. Some of the buildings may still be standing. But again, at least we know they went in and took care of things. And of course, Iran has responded. They've started to make some moves. That we've obviously seen some issues in Israel already, kind of uptick once again in Israel, and that's unfortunate, but we kind of knew that that was probably going to come.
And once again, those 3 nuclear sites, Fordow was the most fortified. That was the one that was
the one we knew the name of.
200 or 300 feet down in the mountain, built in a very specific way to try and shield it from someone trying to take it out. That one will be the one that takes the longest to assess what damage it did to the actual vault that is underground where they carry out these nuclear enrichment capabilities.
Was like, yeah, we know that, because why would they be building this all underground?
Right, exactly.
If you didn't think it was being used for nefarious reasons, why do you think they decided, we need to build this hundreds of feet down?
Well, and once again,
300 feet.
Iran has an operating nuclear power plant in that provides a large amount of electricity to their people. You know how much of their enriched uranium from this program they spent billions of dollars on and all these secret bases and all these sites, how much of that enriched uranium is used for that nuclear power plant?
How much, Will?
Zero. Not a single bit. It all comes from Russia with an agreement. And then Russia takes the depleted cores back to Russia. So they're not even trying to do it for civil purposes, creating a better energy grid for their people. No, they are doing it for one reason only, to get to 90%, to put on a warhead, to get to the United States or Israel or anyone else they feel like they need to blow up. And they are crazy enough to do it.
Yeah, and look, I think that is an okay thing to think about, be concerned about too, which is what Russia does, what China does. They are more friendly to Iran. So what does that look like into the future? That was my son's first question, who is, he's a middle schooler who's kind of in this sort of global world of global politics and history. And he kind of said, okay, well, this is Iran. Now, what is Russia going to do? Well, what's China going to do? Those are the logical questions that I think a lot of people will be asking. And those will be whether this escalates to a point of, sadly, a no return kind of point for a war. But as of right now, it doesn't feel that way.
Well, we know that the Iranian foreign minister has gone to Russia to try to meet with the Russian regime. There's also been some interesting comments from Vladimir Putin where he's like, well, there's 2 million people in Russia that are Russians, in Israel that are Russian speaking. It's almost a Russian speaking country in some ways. So do with that what you will. Of why maybe Russia has kind of sat on the sidelines a little bit. They do have a good relationship with Iran, but they also, in ways that maybe the world doesn't even look at, they have a pretty decent relationship with Israel as well.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.